In this release review, you'll see lots of cards being dragged across your screen, I wave my arms around a lot, and you're going to see lots of explosions. In 2 weeks' time since its release, I've spent more than 70 hours in-game dragging cards at spaceships to make them go boom, in this roguelike deck building game in a sci-fi setting where outfitting your ship and card battles are combined into something that looks deceivingly simple but can be quite challenging, and better yet, a lot of fun. Let's take a look at Breachway. First off, what can you expect from Breachway in a nutshell? In Breachway you have to navigate and battle your way across the map or sector, defeat the sector boss, then move on to the next map to ultimately make it all the way to the last one. Along the way you have to make some choices that can be the difference between smooth sailing or a really rough ride. These choices come in different forms, from what route to take and how to upgrade your ship or how to build your deck, all the way down to the choices that you make during combat. As a result, no run is the same, and this makes for a very diverse gameplay experience. Starting out, you get to select one of 4 different ships, each with its own focus and starting deck. The Arbalest is about pinpointing ship modules using lasers, the Marauder is about overwhelming enemies with flak cannons, the Lancer relies heavily on hacking enemy ship modules, and the Firebrand focuses on balancing your reactor's heat dissipation. Now the Lancer and Firebrand have to be unlocked individually by completing an objective, which is a good thing in my opinion, since the first 2 ships are easier in terms of understanding the game. So this way the learning curve doesn't feel too steep when it comes down to the more challenging tactics during battle. Over time you also get to unlock various perks that carry over from run to run as mana progression, and you get to select up to 3 of them in addition to each ship having its own unique perk. It's nice to be able to switch it up whenever you feel like taking up a different approach. Plus, having different ships creates some room for Edgeflow to introduce new ones at some point, along with new abilities and deck building options. A consistent factor for every new run is having to plot the best course across several maps, which are called sectors, all the way to the final sector boss. Travel is conducted 1 node at a time, with each node containing the possibility of an event that yields a reward, or a combat encounter that rewards you with credits, a new card for your deck, and sometimes even a new ship module or ship upgrade. It's a simple but effective system, and the hunt for better modules becomes more challenging due to restrictions. And that's because you move via these colored shipping lanes, with blue ones allowing only forward movement and yellow ones allowing movement in both directions. This enables you to move over to another blue route or even move backwards across the map. However, ending a move on a node not connected to a blue lane will consume 1 unit of fuel. You'll have a limited amount starting out, and while there are options available to purchase additional fuel along the way, this requires you to spend some time to plot a good course around the map. Taking a detour and having to weigh the risk of being destroyed versus the reward of getting some extra credits or looting a much needed ship upgrade really does add some tension to a playthrough. And the more I progress on the map, the more invested I become, the more I don't want to lose the cool loadout I have going on during that particular run. Now of course you want to maximize your looting before facing the sector boss to make the most of it, but you'll never be able to farm the entire map due to how much fuel you're actually able to buy along the way. Means having to make some difficult choices at times, but it never feels extremely punishing. This balance makes the process of navigating more fun, and it contributes to the replay value. The map contains different types of nodes, from simple waypoints and common encounters to system events, side objectives and space stations. It also shows to which of the 4 factions a node belongs, each represented by its own color. Your standing with each faction can be seen at the top right, and how well you get along plays a role during encounters, giving you certain dialogue options. Now story-wise, Breachway isn't too groundbreaking so far, but I'm not going to spoil it here if you want to discover it for yourself. But a cool feature is that faction standing matters, because knowing that your standing with factions has an influence on what happens when you reach a certain node adds an extra layer to planning your route. Some luck will come into play here because events are randomized, but when you find yourself severely damaged after a few battles, the safest bet is to go to a node next that's controlled by a faction you have a good standing with. Damages can be repaired, and this is primarily done at space stations, making them a logical pit stop to include somewhere along the way, because including as many nodes as possible on a route will likely mean you see more combat and thus rewards, but it also increases the chance of taking on more than you can handle, resulting in being destroyed yourself before you're able to reach that station. In addition to the rest of the UI, the map looks pretty clean. There aren't too many elements making it hard to see what's going on, no distracting menus or overbearing messages. But one of the things that did bother me from the start is whenever you receive a mission, for example visit 4 waypoints or visit a specific node, you do see the objective on the map at the lower right, but the game doesn't specifically highlight which node you need to visit as a reminder afterwards. Right after you accept the mission, it briefly flashes up on the map, but it's easy to lose track of, especially when you come back to the game the next day or so. So I do hope this is something that will be improved at some point, because again, it's also part of planning your route. But in all fairness, Edgeflow Studio has done a great job right after release of taking all feedback to heart, and is making and has already made a lot of fixes and tweaks to improve and balance the overall experience, but more on that in just a bit. Another great reason to visit a space station is because they sell a random range of ship modules and module upgrades. Ship modules each give you access to a fixed group of cards. For example, a Pulse Laser Mark I will grant access to various laser attack cards, and a shield module opens up different shield tactical cards. Module upgrades are tied to specific modules and add a variety of abilities, for instance decreasing their play cost or enhancing their effects. All these upgrades can be purchased at a station for credits, but you can also loot them from common encounters or gain them as a reward from a random event. This is one way to customize your run. The other is that of deck building, adding a new card to your deck after each combat encounter. Now this way of customization really gets me going, but in a good way. I love the combat, but I also love just spending time in a station, looking at all the different options and synergies between modules. In fact, there are so many combinations, even in this early access version of the game, that you're bound to create a loadout that really fits you. And more modules are on the way in free updates, so this will only add to the fun of tweaking your loadouts. One downside, however, is that it's hard when you're just starting out to determine whether you should buy a module or skip it, since there's no preview list of modules that exist in the game. So it'll take you a couple of runs before you've seen several different options and know which ones to look out for that fit your ship or your playstyle. Starting out, you only have a few cards at your disposal, determined by which ship you've just selected. As you progress, you will get to add a new card from certain events or combat encounters. Which card you're offered depends on the ship modules you have installed, with one card being offered per module. And this is where the synergy comes into play between what modules you have installed and then what cards you're being offered as loot. For example, you'll never be offered a light barrage flak card from a resource bay instead of a flak cannon, or find a shield card coming from a railgun instead of a shield module. Choosing which card to pick depends on what strategy or combo you're after, and this is where the real strength of this game comes from, the card game aspect. It can of course also be its Achilles heel, the need to constantly calculate the next few cards that are going to be played and your responses to them, where that leaves you next turn, etc. That's not for everyone. I tried winging it a couple of times, but more often than not I just died before even making it to the first sector boss, let alone the second one. Now of course this game isn't trying to be a fully fledged TCG with complex mechanisms. There's no actual collecting or trading aspect to it. Instead of building a deck and then using that for the entire run, you have to build up your deck along the way every time you start over. And it's sour sweet, because at times I find myself having stumbled across a perfect combination and knowing you'll lose it at some point hurts. But the sweet part here is that you get to see lots of different options you might otherwise not have seen if you had to construct, for example, the deck up front and there were no cards to be looted, but instead be part of some microtransactional booster pack you had to open to get more cards. Because there are actually no microtransactions at this point in Breachway, none. And I think that's great, because they could have just easily hidden new ships behind the paywall, offered a bundle of ship modules for $10, or offer a 25% more damage buff for lasers for 48 hours, that kind of thing. But they didn't, and I think that's been a great choice. On the other hand, I would personally be willing to buy a $5 to $10 DLC expansion somewhere down the road, including 1 or 2 new ships, a couple of extra sectors, equipment and what else not, but that's me. I don't mind voting with my wallet and follow up with supporting a game's future development and expansion if the quality is good. And I think looking at Breachway, it is. But let's not forget the combat. It's the focal point of your ability to combine resource management, deck building, playing the right cards and having some luck. Let me break this down for you. There are 3 types of resources: ordnance, energy and mass. Each ship differs in how many you have of what type starting out, and you can purchase additional reactor power which you can put towards any of the 3 types, and thus increasing your resource income per turn. But what creates some more depth to this is the fact that you can switch these reactor points around during combat. Say for instance you have 0 points ordnance left at the end of your turn. You gain 2 points per turn, but you want to play a card costing 3 points. Then you can take away 1 point from either energy or mass and add it to ordnance. So then the next turn you'll gain 3 and be able to play that card. However, this isn't without its limitations, because as you swap points, you'll take some damage, which is obviously to prevent you from swapping without end and always being able to play a perfect sequence next turn and not coming up short. This penalty system has you choosing between overheating and being able to play that 1 card this turn but taking damage, or wait an extra turn and maybe suffer from a negative effect from an enemy's attack because you are 1 turn short in taking down a missile launcher, for example. And this process of analyzing which cards to play in what order is really a lot of fun. Choosing the lesser of 2 evils when it's clear you're going to take damage next turn may feel bad, but it's all about thinking ahead and taking your opponent's next playable cards into account. Now, you can plan a couple of steps ahead between the enemy's next move, your hand, your resources and what you might end up drawing next turn, but Breachway never really becomes too complex that it turns into Magic the Gathering, which is nice because that makes the game more accessible. However, as of today, the game doesn't offer so many different modules and cards that it's overwhelming. So after playing the game for over a week, you'll probably have seen every card in the game. And in tandem with what I said earlier, there is a difference between having seen every card, but then also knowing every combination. So even though you might have seen every card or upgrade, there's still a lot of room and time for you in the game to try out different combinations. One last important point here about combat and your progression during a run overall. Yes, luck is a factor. Events are random and so are the enemies you face, so you might just be confronted with an enemy that is a hard counter for your setup, and then you also happen to draw all the wrong cards per turn, so you end up being space dust. Now, it wouldn't be the first time where I thought I was making great progress, only 3 nodes away from a space station, odds were looking good, only to be decimated the next node over. It can happen and it feels bad for a minute, but the ease with which you can just start another run, how quickly you're back to building up your next loadout is surprisingly satisfying. Reviewing the visuals and audio, the ship modules look insanely good. They're detailed, colorful, and there's a clear difference in design between each one. Sometimes you see games where different class ships are all still looking the same, they only differ in size and a small extra curves here and there, but with Breachway, there's no doubt it's been a priority during design to have each model stand out. I also found the combination of how effects look during battle and the sounds that go with them to be exactly right. No measly laser sounds or small tickling noises when you hit an enemy's hull, far from it, because proper impact sounds give a loud rattling noise that gives you the feeling you've just fired a huge gun and that it did quite some damage, which all in all is quite satisfying. And another cool detail about ship modules, as you add new ones to your ship at a station using the menu, you can actually see them pop up on your ship model as well, and this is a sort of attention to detail that I love. The music isn't overwhelming, but a good spacey backing track when you're on the map, and a more tense track can be heard during battle. Never too present, never distracting, but simply just right. Overall, the vibe and atmosphere are excellent in supporting the gameplay itself. So when you look at the complete picture, Breachway is a very enjoyable and fun game, and one of the reasons I keep coming back to it is that it gives you this itch that needs scratching. wanting to get to the end boss but having this curiosity of what types of modules and upgrades you'll find along the way and discover a crazy new card combo. Another reason is that the game doesn't require you to spend at least an hour to make some sort of notable progress. You can just load up the game for a few battles or spend an entire evening playing. So whether you only have 15 minutes, an hour or 2 hours to spend on gaming, Breachway is a game that can be played in any time slot. But for me, a major contributing factor that makes Breachway stand out, to the extent that I see myself playing this game not just for 3 weeks, but long after that, is the effort developer Edgeflow Studio is continuing to put into the game. They have put out daily patches in the first week after launch, listening closely to players on their Discord to work out immediate problems, responding to feedback, and communicating very clearly what it is they have patched and what is on their to-do list. Now, this type of commitment post-launch, making sure the foundation is solid and that players are having a fun experience, may seem like the logical approach, but it seems surprisingly uncommon nowadays when games are released, especially larger ones, so Edgeflow Studio is definitely on the right track. They also gave advance notice of shifting focus to new content creation as soon as the game has seen all initial issues fixed, and that makes me excited for all new things coming to Breachway in the future. That's all for this review. Leave a comment to let me know what you think of Breachway. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so because I upload new previews, reviews and guides on various sci-fi games regularly, and the best way to see them is with a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable those notifications, and as always, thank you very much for your time in watching this video, and see you next time right here on the channel. Bye.